What you're seeing in this video is a clip from my live stream that I do on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern time on the OBR's YouTube channel. It's a show I call Quincy Carrier Live. So if you want to catch me live on Mondays during the football season, make sure you subscribe to the OBR's YouTube channel. Me and them are doing a collaboration for this year, and I'm going to be live Mondays at 7 p.m. on the OBR. We are just watching this gigantic ship that is the $230 million contract of Deshaun Watson, the career of Deshaun Watson, go up and slowly sink into the water. And the most tragic thing about the Titanic isn't the loss of the ship itself. That's secondary. It's just material. It's the tragedy that it brought people down with it, that people lost their lives with it. And again, if we're taking this in the football context, I'm watching the ship of Deshaun Watson's career sink, and I think Kevin Stefanski is at the top of the shipwreck conducting music, about to be the next victim to this whole thing. This is unfortunate because I think Kevin's a good coach. I think Kevin has kind of doubled down on his pride here because I don't think this is a Jimmy Haslam creation. I don't think Jimmy Haslam is handing him notes for the press conference and saying, say this. You said that because you wanted to say that. And why you want to say that? Because you have pride. Also, another thing we got to acknowledge here, what's making this whole situation worse for us as fans is probably what's making the team more stubborn about making a move on this. Because Baker Mayfield is playing really good. And Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson are going to be related. Their careers are going to be intertwined. Because on the surface, it looks like the Browns chose Deshaun Watson over Baker Mayfield. That's certainly how it's going to play out. Now, the truth of that is questionable, not really exactly how it happened, but that's going to be the narrative that gets pushed, especially if Baker Mayfield continues to play well. And the Browns are aware of that. So every time Baker Mayfield just doesn't look like the worst quarterback in the NFL, they know that they're going to look foolish if Deshaun Watson doesn't turn it around. So they want Deshaun Watson to turn it around. And Deshaun Watson can't turn it around on the bench. So any type of hope that they get, any 10 for 10 stretch, any decent throw that they get from Deshaun Watson is going to give them enough copium to keep going on this thing. But it is just copium. It should not continue. But the pressure of Baker's success being juxtaposed to the Browns' failure, right? I saw that one clip on Fox. They played it like a little what if. And the Browns are preparing for a big game, and they're going to be 5-1 with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, and it's going to be a big game versus the Eagles, and we're just excited, and look what we missed out on. And we're doing that last year when the team went 11-6, but they're doing it now, okay? And that is something that lives in the Browns' heads right now. Every game Baker Mayfield looks really good. They know they're going to hear about it. And the only way for them in their minds to rectify the situation is to get the most out of Deshaun Watson. I don't even think that's the best way to rectify it, to be honest with you. I think it would be better if you just turned the page, went on to something new, and started winning games again. Because like I said, they didn't talk about this in 2021. Not 2021, in 2023. The reason they didn't talk about it in 2023 is because the Browns are winning games. So who cares what Baker Mayfield's doing? Baker Mayfield made the Pro Bowl last year. Nobody really cared that much because the Browns are winning games. That's what the Browns have to do if they want to avoid all of this. They got to win games. But now they're caught up in trying to prove a point about Watson. Make no mistake about it, man. The only reason Deshaun Watson is starting as your quarterback for the Cleveland Browns is pride. Because the people who made this decision, the people who pounded the table for this decision, the people who okayed a giant contract for this decision, and I know people are trying to not include the people they like in this scenario, those people are trying to protect their pride. And the only way in their minds to protect their pride is to make sure this Deshaun Watson thing works. Only thing is, and this feels like the clip from Breaking Bad, but y'all remember when Hank got killed in Breaking? Well, spoiler warning. My bad. Some people still watching Breaking Bad, but spoiler warning for Breaking Bad. So if you've not finished Breaking Bad, get off real quick. I'll be done with this whole point in 2 minutes. But in Breaking Bad, there's a scene where Hank, Walt's brother, is basically about to get executed by the Colombian cartel. And Walt's trying to beg and bargain and try to fix this mistake that he created that put his brother in this situation. And Hank just looks at him and goes, "You're smart, but you're too dumb to realize that dude already made his mind up. My life's been over since you made that mistake. It's only been a matter of time." And then bam, Hank dies. Deshaun Watson's a much similar situation. That Deshaun Watson era ended at the end of that Washington Commanders game. There's no coming back from that. There's no having a big career turnaround. That's it. For him specifically too. Maybe somebody else who was younger or more well-liked would be able to come back from that. But that's it. That's death knell. That's wraps. It's wraps for your NFL career. You put a game like that up. That's wraps for your career, especially as a superstar quarterback. And since you are a superstar quarterback with baggage that's not very good, probably not going to have a long career as a backup if you have a career as a backup. So the chance of him hanging around, getting another opportunity for a resurgence, it's not very likely. This is where the Browns are. We have a clip here from Pro Football Talk that I would like to put on screen and react to. If we can get that.
There was an interesting tweet from Mitchell Schwartz, former All-Pro offensive lineman who played for the Chiefs and before that the Browns.
Right.
Because Kevin Stefanski was asked yesterday, again, will you stick with Deshaun Watson? The answer, one word, yes. Said Schwartz on Twitter X, I still call it Twitter, and I'm just going to
Mama named her Twitter, I'm
just
calling
gonna
her
forget
Twitter.
that the guy who owns the current hellscape wants it to be called X. All the more reason to call it Twitter. It's incredibly shitty to do this to the rest of the team. Sorry, London. Joel Bitonio is out there every week playing through who knows what and has to wreck his body when they have no chance of being good because of the quarterback. Myles Garrett is playing in pain every week. I feel for everyone else there. There is a certain point where it's just, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And it's not the coach's call. It's all the way up to ownership. Just like with the Jets, the ownership starts at the dysfunction starts at the top, and this contract is a result of an ownership decision. They're sticking with him because of ownership, and they're just stuck.
They're stuck.
And I admire the Browns players for going out there and busting their asses every week when they're playing with one hand tied behind their back.
Seriously. I mean, especially the defense, the way they still fly around, physical. Right. I mean, yeah, they let up a few plays, but again, I think they also look at it like, hey, if we don't make the plays, we got no chance to win the game, so we got to take some chances there. And I feel like Jim Schwartz probably feels that pressure as well. But yes, it's another game. I don't know what to say. It's horrible. It's ugly to watch, and it's an offense that, with Kevin Stefanski, it's a good offense, but it's dependent on the run game, and it's never been able to be totally.
Can we pause it right here for a sec? So first thing, I want to challenge the narrative that it's just Jimmy. Obviously, Jimmy is a part of this. But I think it is being in denial to think that Kevin has nothing to do with it and that Andrew Berry has nothing to do with this. Because it's only being said now when it's convenient for it to not be on Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski. But the truth is, Andrew Berry was out there defending this decision in 2020 when the Browns, not 2020, in 2022, when the Browns made it. They were defending the trade and justifying it, and they were excited about the move and talked about it excitingly when the move was made. Same thing with Kevin Stefanski. Kevin was excited about what Deshaun could bring to the offense. He didn't seem like a coach doing something against his will when they made the move before they knew what he would look like on the field in 2022. I mean, this is a guy Kevin's gone out of his way to call his franchise quarterback, to call a superstar quarterback. Same thing with Andrew Berry. To me, that doesn't sound like a regime doing stuff against their will. Hell, even what we saw with the quote today. Doesn't feel like a team doing something against their will. I know it's easy and clean to make this whole narrative about big old dysfunctional Jimmy Haslam making these poor guys do something they didn't want to. But why didn't they feel like hostages in 2022 if they're hostages right now? Why didn't they feel like they were hostages in 2023 if they're hostages right now? How are they only hostages when the quarterback is putting up some of the worst numbers we've ever seen a quarterback put up? How are they only now hostages? It seems very convenient to me. I think the truth is exactly what it looks like. They were sick of Baker Mayfield, and I agree with why they were sick of Baker Mayfield. They wanted to upgrade. If you look out there in the upgrade market, Deshaun was the best quarterback available. They did their due diligence and saw what was available along with 14 other teams, and then they got down to the final 3. They put the offer in. They put the deal in. Deshaun chose them after some muddling around, and boom. That's how Deshaun Watson came here. But it didn't feel like they were doing something against their will when they were recruiting Deshaun Watson. It didn't feel like they were doing something against their will when they landed Deshaun Watson. And for the last 2 years, it hasn't felt like this regime was doing something against their will. So me suddenly believing now that they're doing something against their will and that Jimmy Haslam is forcing them to make this decision, it seems a bit far-fetched in my opinion. I know what people want to believe about this so that Kevin and AB can be clean from this. But that's not true. They made this decision because in 2022, Deshaun Watson looked like a massive upgrade over Baker Mayfield. It wasn't a crazy decision when it was made. Deshaun Watson was really good in 2020 and really good in 2019. It was a decision that some people thought was cynical, but applauded. Thought that it would work out in the football field. The question was, would it be worth it? Would it feel good for your fans to be good for this? That's why they made the move. They weren't forced to make this move. They made this move. And I'm willing to say, hey, Deshaun Watson was nothing like what you thought you would get. You got sold a lemon. You wanted to buy the lemon because you thought it was a Lamborghini, right? You thought it was a fancy car at a decent enough price, and you were like, okay, let me get that car. That's what we need to succeed. Ended up being a lemon. Okay, damn, it's a lemon. That's what it is. But if you tell me after you buy the lemon, well, you know, I ain't actually want to buy the lemon, I'm going to start looking at you like Hugh Jackson, the king of Cap, because it sounds like Cap. Like, tell me in any other situation if somebody started copping a plea this late after being with the program for the last 2 years, if it wouldn't sound like copping a plea. Like, if it wouldn't sound like Cap, it's Cap. Like, I don't believe it. And I think part of the reason Deshaun Watson's still starting is because these guys wanted Deshaun Watson in the first place. Let's go.
That way, right? So I've never looked at it quite that way, but with their offensive line being banged up and no Nick Chubb, they can't do that. And now it puts more of a spotlight on the passing game and Deshaun Watson. And it's just... yeah, it's bad decisions. It's holding the ball. It's underwhelming throws. I mean, again, like you'll see, and maybe cut to the wide shot here. Like I look at things like this. Most quarterbacks sit here and throw the ball, and they're upright, and their arm comes through. And this, you heard me in the viewing room yesterday. I was telling he has throws in the game where he looks like he is throwing off a mound. He throws the ball and ends up in a bent-over, followed-through position like he just threw a fastball off a mound in the 9th inning of a Yankees game. And that's just, there's things there that it doesn't look right psyche. It doesn't look right physically. There's nothing to be positive that's positive about the Cleveland offense right now.
And maybe I should have retitled this video, The New Space Jam, because that's what this team is right now. They're the new Space Jam movie. Right? You remember in Space Jam, the original Space Jam, not the one with LeBron in it, the new legacy one. I'm talking about the original Space Jam. Remember how the aliens snuck up into the basketball players and they took their ball and they somehow sucked all the talent from these players? That's what Deshaun Watson looks like out there in 2024. Again, they were sold a lemon. I don't think anybody knew that Deshaun Watson was a lemon when they sold him to us. I talk to people in Houston about Deshaun Watson all the time, and they are just shocked. They believed Deshaun Watson was next up. Like, they didn't see this coming. I know people try to act like people saw it coming. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw this level of fall off coming for Deshaun Watson. If somebody does, they're lying. The claims they did, they were lying, right? Nobody saw this level of fall off. And I think there's a level of grace that you give because this fall off happened, right? And there was a level of grace I'm willing to give. Like, I know that in my mind, Kevin was just as big as part of this as Jimmy and everybody else. They make unilateral decisions as a group. And I'm willing to give grace on this because it was such a big fall off. Nobody could have predicted this. Right? If Deshaun Watson was just as good as advertised and then he looked this bad, well, not then he looked this bad, but if Deshaun Watson was just as good as advertised and it didn't make the Browns better, okay, now everybody's got to go. But Deshaun Watson looking like a completely different person the second he gets traded to Cleveland, I mean, like, that's not really something you can predict. Where I do hold the Browns accountable for trading for Deshaun Watson is once you realize that's the case, you got to move on from it. And I understand the first year he was coming back off the 700 days. He only played 6 games. It didn't make sense to pull the cord then. That of course, you're going to give that another year. And in 2023, he only played really 5 games. And in those 5 games, he was 5-1. The team was scoring 27 points a game. Okay, I understand with continuing. But this stretch of games is not just bad. If this were regular bad, I would be on here saying we got to see what Watson does the whole season. He's just having a rough patch. But this isn't regular bad. This is historically bad. This is some of the worst quarterback play this franchise has ever seen. And think about the scope of that comment. We're talking about a franchise who had seen the most bad quarterbacks, the most bad quarterback play, the longest duration of bad quarterback play. And we have nothing we can compare this to in a negative light. When it's that bad for 6 games, you have to pull the plug. And throwing Deshaun Watson into this game against the Cincinnati Bengals at home, where it's not going to be a friendly environment, where the fans are going to be hilariously upset or worse, indifferent. Because honestly, that's the biggest fear for this team is that the fan base is indifferent. People just don't care if the team wins or loses anymore because they just want this to be over with. And you're bringing that to Cleveland Browns Stadium on a Sunday at 1 o'clock after people spent 3 hours in a Muni lot commiserating about how that guy sucks. And you think that's going to be a pleasant environment? You think the Browns are going to be hyped up to play in that environment? I mean, the only thing saving Deshaun Watson is that Nick Chubb can't be on the field without him. Because we're not going to boo Nick Chubb. But the second Deshaun Watson starts throwing them ducks and that offense don't move, they're going to boo him. And again, maybe Nick Chubb can be the saving grace. But again, he's going to play limited snaps. I mean, if I didn't know more, I would think that the Browns are setting him up to fail. And I don't even understand setting them up to fail anymore. The case has been made. If your whole point was let's make him play this way so he can get benched, the case has been made for 2 weeks, brother. If this is some kind of elaborate ploy by Kevin Stefanski to force a benching of Deshaun Watson, I mean, it would have been done a couple weeks ago because all you needed to bench Deshaun Watson was the Commanders game.